Welcome to another edition of Art of the Kickstart. Today I'm super excited because I'm playing catch. I am talking with Chad Hickman, founder and co-owner of Sandlot Goods, also a member of the team that created Yardball, and he's brought in a play partner with him, Garret Prather, the director of business development. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today on Art of the Kickstart.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep, glad to be here.
So I know we had some tech difficulties, but we're here. We're ready to play. First off, I've got to say congrats. You guys have a campaign that has reached and been supported by over 1,000 backers, which is huge. We've almost raised almost $50,000 for this campaign. Yardball, the ball for all. So if you would, give our audience a little bit of background and talk about the product as if they've never heard it or seen it before.
Yeah, it's kind of the we like to think of it as the ultimate ball, just to bring everyone together. It kind of had some interesting roots. It started with this tape ball, and this was a ball that we just sort of pulled tape off of a floor after doing a project, and it just became this sort of conversation starter. We would chuck it around the office. We would use it during brainstorm sessions, and we always joked that it's the perfect size, weight, and just feel to where it doesn't knock stuff over and it doesn't hurt. So it turned into this kind of had a little cult following in this little community we have. And we decided sort of after the pandemic got through its first phase, let's see if we can turn this into a product that we can, really, scale up and make a bunch of them, so that it's not just us making a bunch of tape balls. So that's kind of where this came into play. It went from this to ultimately this is what we're launching with. So it took us a little bit to nail down, how do we get the feel similar to this? And we went through several materials and countless amounts of leather, different providers to find a leather that was broken in right from the get-go. So that's kind of how it started. It took us 18 months probably from when we decided to do it to when we actually launched our Kickstarter.
So in terms of creating the first tape ball, I know office antics and things like that, right? There's lots of things people throw around in an office, whatever they may be. Some hurt more than others. The yard ball seems really interesting, not only because of the idea of it. The ball had been created beforehand, but you guys have taken a very unique spin on that. And it seems like it's evolved based on some of that office banter and play in terms of it being not only something for the office, but for something for everyone to be able to play with. How do you think that that's kind of evolved from the initial idea to where it is now?
Yeah, I think it's probably a couple different phases of it where Chad and team knowing too, given the history of Sandlot Goods, especially before I joined, where based on making leather goods, I think that's really where it was like a natural evolution, kind of within the small knit community that Chad speaks of, where it's okay, so we can transform it into a leather good because that's what we know how to make. But then also diving into that and realizing it's not just as simple as just grab the nearest thing of leather and make it a good ball. But I think it's where it really took off is once that iteration started taking place and everybody would, you take it home, take it to a tailgate, kind of take it wherever because we're testing it out. That naturally revealed itself on how it can appeal to a wider audience. And I think just in my own personal background, where I've seen the most success whenever I've worked on teams and with other companies trying to get products out is getting it out in the field and iterating on the spot with the real consumer is going to be your greatest chance for success. And I think that's where we're lucky with something like this that is simple and easy to get out to the field. That's where eyes got open even more to what is the potential for this, and also just kind of, not to be cliche, but just the natural joy that it can cause with people on just getting out there and throwing the ball. The story I always use is my mom, who I've never really thrown a ball with in my life outside.
Sure.
As soon as I brought it home and we started all testing it, doing it, she came out and was throwing the ball with us too. And that for me was my own aha moment of okay, this really appeals to everybody because it doesn't take this crazy skill set to be able to throw a spiral like Patrick Mahomes, who, side note, is the greatest quarterback there is and will be.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
I mean, yeah, I don't know how much time do you have. I only need a minute, but if you need more time, but
well, it's all the amount of accolades he has is a minute worth, right?
yeah, but it's so appealing because it really is. There's such a low barrier to entry, and then just storing it and keeping it places as well. When you think about, if you think about like a baseball and you have a glove, and then it might be like a specific time frame to do it. I mean, this thing is literally, one of our social media posts was like, it like finally makes good use out of a glove box for the first time since everybody was wearing gloves in the early 1900s or wherever like
Sure.
how the glove box first got started. So I think that's just what gave us this great idea of being able to have this be widespread, and then just given the history of Sandlot Goods as a company and starting in leather, and we've since evolved into other products, but it was just kind of a natural pairing in that way.
Yeah. And always front of mind the whole time we were trying to create this thing was it has to be used without, like, it has to be able to be used without a glove. You can use it with a glove, but we had to make sure that and that's kind of why we went through so many different types of leather before we landed on this one, which incidentally, this was our first choice, but it's very expensive. So we kind of went in this like roundabout way, like a lot of people do, like, oh, we can do this cheaper. And then we finally realized, no, that's not possible in this case.
Yeah, and it gets back to, I think, kind of our core as a company, where we do make products. A lot of these, I mean, this is made by hand, and a big thing too for us is hats at Sandlot Goods, and those are all made from scratch as well here in the USA, paying a living wage. Like, it's not an easy or normal path to take these days, but getting it to it, and even like a product as simple as this, it ends up, there is a lot behind it to get it, whether it's to come back to that simpleness or to kind of start, but there's so much behind it that leads to it.
Nice. Let's I want to talk about the name. What was the process there of naming it Yardball?
Oh my gosh. So this tape ball, we always referred to this as a catch ball.
Okay.
And so when we actually went, I think it happened the day before we filmed our Kickstarter video, we found out from we decided, you know what, let's do it right. Let's hire an IP lawyer to make sure catch ball
Proper due diligence
is available. And so the day before we filmed our catch ball Kickstarter video, we found out that it was actually not available.
Wow.
And the lawyers highly recommended we come up with a new name. So it took us a few weeks to find something that, because we had all grown so it was like part of the family. It was our catch ball. It perfectly encapsulated what it was. So we tried a few things. We were like, Pilly was one of them, and we're like, no, it just doesn't quite ring.
Sounds horrible.
Sounds horrible now. And we were
running the kids should play with.
We were running with that for like 2 days, and then we all like woke up and like, that's the worst name ever. So Yardball just kind of stuck because we found when we took it home, our children just ultimately ended up out in the yard with it. So it started to feel perfect, and now we've sort of done like a 180. Like there's no more slips where you call it catch ball. It's a yard ball. So.
And I think it's the reason too. I think a Yardball is appealing is because you think about too how everybody grows up and insert whatever sport it is, playing in whatever street, with like no shoes or none of the proper equipment, like all those great stories of how kids like scrap to either like a certain game. And I think that's why like Yardball, like it's your yard, whatever you're like, define what your yard is. Everyone's yard can be completely different. And even especially during pandemic times, like what is a yard and how do people find that space? And I think that's where it has really it's stuck, and I think it's really grown too.
Yeah.
Nice. Talk to me a little bit about the larger company with Sandlot and what you guys are doing, and kind of how that business has evolved to now use crowdfunding as a way to launch this new innovation.
Yeah. I'll take that one since I've been doing it since 2014. Sandlot started as a hobby outside in the garage of a photo, and it sort of evolved from this dream. I sold creative services like advertising, photography, and things like that. And after just getting beaten down by the constant negotiation, because it's a creative service and there's no tangible thing, we always joke like, let's just make something and put a price on it. And if somebody wants to buy it, they can buy it. And if they don't, they can just keep walking. It felt freeing. It seemed like it was going to be super easy at the time, and it ultimately did not end up being that way. But we started making baseball-inspired leather goods. Initially, we wanted to make leather goods out of old baseball gloves, but having scalability in mind, that always was a concern. And then we went to Horween, this tannery in Chicago, to find baseball glove leather, and found out that the minimums were outside of hobby quantities. So we ended up searching and finding a Horween leather, because that was kind of the leather of the day in 2014. Still great stuff. And we found a leather that felt like baseball to us, and we started making leather goods. And that went on for a few years as just this like side hobby that we put way too much time into when should have been focusing on other things. But it just, in Kansas City in 2014, the Kansas City Royals were absolutely crushing it, and you could put Kansas City on anything and sell it, and people wanted it and just ate it up. And there were so many Kansas City companies that sort of funded themselves by selling shirts that said Kansas City on it. So that really pushed us to the next level. Dream was always, for me, if I ever broke away from the photography world, was to make hats. And ultimately that's what I ended up doing. Had 6 to 7 employees all the way through till 2020. And then when the pandemic hit, we pivoted like a lot of people and made PPE, testing gowns, masks. We ended up making, I think ultimately ended up being 600,000 masks and gowns. A lot of those were going to first responders. We had a great deal. We were working a lot with the VA health system on a very specific type of mask. And that just sort of opened our eyes to this pool of great sewers in Kansas City. And it was then when we decided, you know what, it may be the worst time ever to start a business in the middle of a pandemic, but you know what, let's start making hats. We have all these people.
Yep.
We don't want to let them go. We don't want to, fire people in the middle of a pandemic. So it worked out amazingly well that as our mask demand started falling, the machinery and training was coming online to make hats. And, that makes it sound super easy. There were a lot of growing pains, but, from an outsider, it was this perfect changeover. And so we make hats, and the Yardball was always this thing off in the distance. And we finally decided, it had been something we talked about for another product we make called a woolly drink sweater, which is just a merino wool can koozie. We thought maybe this could be a crowdfunded product, and it just didn't feel right. And finally, when we truly landed on our Yardball, we sort of just like, you know what, let's dip our toes in the water of Kickstarter. Let's look around at some marketing agencies and see like what is this actual process. And it just felt so right for this, because we had these benchmarks that if we hit them, we knew we could scale. And it felt like we were being like truly honest with Kickstarter. Like, you hit a certain amount, then we can start looking at new colors and things like that. And we hit a certain amount, and maybe we can engineer some sewing ball clamps that will help us speed up. And it just, because it's so unique, it needs its own, it needs a leather that we don't use for many other things. Actually, we don't use it for anything else. And it needs tools that we would not use for anything else. So just from a crowdfunding standpoint, it just felt perfect for us.
Yeah, I think
Amazing.
I would add too is just when it comes to like procurement, kind of that very unsexy part of business, and where that's why this is appealing too, because it is that high quality leather and supply chain, which everyone is tired of hearing about now, but it's definitely a real thing. And being able to lean on the experience that was gained with hat making and how there's a lot of procurement that comes with that. I mean, we could do a whole different podcast on how many pieces there are to a hat and how tough it is to make one. But that, I think, also we're able to dip into that experience and know and see, okay, here's how we can also get scrappy to start. And that's where you look at one of ours that sold out immediately was this ball that is a really nice two-toned. We had enough to make 100 of these, call them founders, and that's what it is. It's like a very unique. There's only 100 of these that we're making, but that I think was in my mind a critical piece to capture people's imaginations of like what it can be and what it can become. So it can start as something as a staple, but really the funding allows these kind of things that we can dream up in our heads to become this reality that appeals to a lot of people.
Awesome. So you'd mentioned in terms of maybe trying to think of a product for crowdfunding. I know Yardball maybe wasn't immediately made for crowdfunding, but what was kind of that evolution of knowing about crowdfunding and then knowing that Yardball was going to be a good fit to launch using Kickstarter as a means to validate that idea?
Wow. Do you want to take that? I have, in a way, sort of forgotten the question in my attempt to avoid it. Could you say that one more time?
Just what was your first introduction to crowdfunding, and how did you know that Yardball was going to be a good fit?
Okay. Yeah. So I've been looking at Kickstarter for quite a long time. I've backed a few projects, in a way that like I've been the guy that donates $1 to things that I think are cool in the past. Like I said before, it always felt like the products that work well on Kickstarter are the ones that aren't things that typically have machinery just out there ready for it, or that have these like benchmarks that you can hit that will help you really scale. Because I think that's what it's about. It's like using the crowd to advance fund your scalability, and it really felt like Yardball had those benchmarks that would allow us to, like, once we come out the other side of it, we have this, we might have 6 colors, and that's what everyone's asking for is 6 colors. We might be able to put licensing on it because that's something we can pursue further, because we have this initial infusion of sales. So I hope that answered your question, and I didn't just regurgitate what I was saying before, but I've always looked at it as like benchmarks.
Absolutely. No, and I think you guys have hit a significant benchmark with, over 1,000 backers coming into the campaign. What was some of that prep work that you did in advance of the campaign to put yourself in such a good position to not only overfund on day one, but see continued growth in the campaign day after day it's been online?
Yeah, I think that's where, when I was thinking as Chad was talking about that, kind of what would make you think something is good for crowdfunding. I think some of that too is uh, having now on the other side of it. I don't think we have any idea what it truly was getting into it. Where you can think, oh yeah, we'll just crowdfund this. That's how we can do it. And then you start writing it all down, and you're like, okay, this is not just, hey, we're going to get a bunch of people to support it and do it. And so I think we also went through that internally on a couple of different stages of being confident enough to really take the plunge. And so that's, I think, something that has been a big time learning, was seeing how to line up everything from a business standpoint, but then so much of it too is personal. And I think that's kind of the beauty of the crowdfunding, where you want to make sure that it is a legitimate thing that the consumer is going to want, but also at the same time, I think there's a little bit like you want your friends to make sure, like your friends and family, like they think it's a cool thing too. And so much work getting ready on creating all the assets, getting the page done, verifying the pricing, if you're going to ship international or not. And so for us to have a partner, and what we did was work with partnership on being able to help someone who's been there and done it and help guide through. I think that was really nice. And this might not be the best way to compare it, but it's how it's on my mind, because I have two little boys who are just energy and pinball around the house. So when I think of, like, for us going through, when we had the boys, we had a doula, and that was like, a doula is so critical because they've been there and done that and can just keep you sane through a really trying time that you have no idea what you're doing. And that's like what's come to my mind, and that's probably, I see Chad smile as he's processing that. But I really think there's something to that. And And so it's such a combination of like doing everything that you've been professionally taught to do from a marketing standpoint, from a business development standpoint, from an operational standpoint, but then really being able to just be able to like convince your friends and family to support something and not make it sound like a pyramid scheme, I think is kind of like the other true aspect of it. And that's what's been kind of, I don't know if like for me, like personally funny in a way of like texting and being like, here's a link and here's like, this is what it is. And like, it's a leather ball, but you got to trust me. This is what you want. And it's kind of like using your social capital for it. Yep. I think that's been kind of like a new thing, being the first crowdfunding. Nice. But I can't wait for the doula part of this to really blow up the podcast world. So.
It's going to be a thing. I know, Chad, you had mentioned it in terms of, doing some research and trying to find other people that have done it. And, you've been working with us here at Inventus Partners for a while to help this product come to market successfully. What were some of those considerations that you guys were looking at when you were looking to choose an agency to partner with?
Yeah, for sure. I would say number one was transparency. Number two was, and maybe this is part of transparency, setting realistic expectations. We felt like some of the others, the goals they were giving us just felt a little bit lofty to try to get us in the door. And I'm not saying you guys set the bar low, but I feel like you're performing as you promised. And so that was huge. And then just getting to know the team. I think after one of the first Zoom meetings, we all left the meeting and we're just like, this is the team that's going to carry us to victory. So yeah. You have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think it's just, and for me too, especially coming in and really kind of trying to run point on it from a day to day, definitely when I was trying to vet and look at it, it was that kind of it was realistic. It just seemed realistic. And I think going and talking with a couple of different companies, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of similarities, but then there are those kind of one or two things that set folks apart. And for some of it can be appealing to a certain company and some for others. And so for us, it was that transparency and really that need of like, I need to know if this just isn't working. And I need to know if we need to really pivot or change or do this. And I felt that from the beginning. And that's why I think the relationship has gone really well. And just that the kind of accountability and it helped us stay true to the timeline. I think that's the other important thing. And what I appreciated too is how it's laid out where this is the timeline we've seen success with. These are milestones we have to hit. I think you guys didn't overcomplicate it. You're like, this is what can help lead to success. Now, of course, you have to do a lot of this. This isn't just, we're going to hand it over to you and then they're going to be successful. But I think that's what we needed in order to have success. I think as we've seen, it has, and there's definitely a lot of credit goes to you and your team for being able to get us to where we are. Like, I'm hoping as this podcast goes, we hit that 50,000 mark, and I know we wouldn't be there if we were just doing it today. And it just goes to that, having never done a Kickstarter before and going the route of crowdfunding with this product. It's why we needed someone such as you all. So it's been great.
Absolutely. I'm seeing backers come in every minute. I'm looking at this thing going up and up and up. So really excited for that. What's been like one big takeaway or one big surprise with launching this campaign?
I mean, outside of like the first 6 hours, it felt like we were on cloud nine. I don't think, when you guys were setting expectations, I don't feel like the expectation was that we would fund in 6 hours.
Yeah, that's why
it was very reserved, and it felt,
because I pressed too. I was like, just like, tell me, what are you feeling? Like, what are you thinking? How are you gonna do? And they're like, yeah, like it seems the numbers, like that's we're going in steady. I'm like, okay, I really, yeah.
I didn't think on day 1, hour 6, I would be like, oh my gosh, are we gonna be able to make all these? Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like we always figure it out, and we knew we would need to hire if we got to certain places and train people, and that's part of what we're trying to fund here is jobs. But it happened so fast in the first 6 hours that those feelings just hit me.
Yeah, I think if I were to go back and look at the team's group text, it would be pretty funny because it was probably like how like teenagers texting the joy and excitement, or like screenshots as things go up. I think that's it. I think for me, it's just so satisfying that like we know we're not in a groupthink situation where we all think this is a great product. Like it really shows that it is a great product, and I just think it's gonna be cool for so many people to experience these when they do get them and throw them around and all that. I think that's just like, I don't know, it's so satisfying to have that feeling, and you get that through crowdsourcing like so quick versus like, okay, now like if we had put it out on shelves on our stores and then had it online and you can like kind of ship them one by one. And of course, like you can look at monthly reporting and see it, but yeah, it was just to have it go in real time. That's something you just don't get that all the time.
Yep. That is definitely the unique element of crowdfunding, right? Where there's a constant feedback channel as well as revenue coming in immediately, usually if you do these pre-launches correctly.
Yeah, I think on the lighter side, kind of is like the amount of people who comment on advertising on Facebook was very new to me, and especially people who felt threatened that we were trying to take the baseball glove away. We're like, no, like this complements. This is not substitute. You're not going to have the Kansas City Royals out there throwing yard balls against the Boston Red Sox anytime soon.
We were made into villains that wanted to kill the baseball glove.
Yeah, no. Instead of it being like like an appreciation product for it was viewed as that. So luckily that was just a few folks.
Very vocal minority.
Yes. So.
Well, they can do that with their Facebook comments, right? Some people have more free time than others.
Yeah, even on the 4th of July, I think that was probably my peak moment. Yeah. During the 4th of July, I'm getting notifications. I'm like, this is not a day. Like, shouldn't you be doing anything else right now? So
no, just eating hot dogs and commenting on Facebook ads.
Yeah. The American dream.
Indeed. Well, speaking of the American dream, this is going to get us into our launch round. Garrett, you drew the short straw. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
So what inspired you to work with entrepreneurs?
I think for me, my greatest inspiration in that regard has always been my dad. And for that, being an architect, he's an architect, and pretty early in his career, just wanted to go on his own and do it. And he had his own firm for about 30 years. And I had the privilege of actually being able to work with him. I started learning AutoCAD and correcting red lines at age 14. And I mean, hopefully there's no laws now being broken with that. But I started young doing that and just was able to watch him be both an architect, but also be a business owner. And I think that was just super inspiring for me. And that's always been something that's helped drive me. Now I've worked in companies very large to hundreds of thousands of people globally to very small. And I always feel more at home when it comes to the entrepreneurs and kind of that roll your sleeves up sort of business mindset.
Nice. So if you could meet with any entrepreneur, who would you want to have a catch with?
So I think I'd want to have a catch with, it's going to be probably an obscure figure, but John Augustus Roebling. So that is, since I'm guessing not many people know who that is the person who designed, but ultimately didn't finish the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City. For about 7 years, my wife and I lived in New York City. And so that was kind of always woke up seeing the Brooklyn Bridge as I walked to work. It's just a fascinating bridge from a kind of a son of an architect standpoint, if you will. So I would really be interested to throw a ball with him because of the fact that he was able to take something during a time period of moving into steel as far as a metal and build something so big and great that it exists today. And today people marvel and wonder how on earth was this thing built? So that would just be fascinating, like how his mind translated that from nothing onto paper. And he designed tons of bridges across the United States during a very interesting time. So that's what I'd throw a ball with.
Nice. Well, he's a first-time mention on the show, so thank you for that. What would have been your first question for him, though?
Probably what he was so bad at farming, because that's where he failed. Was he was a German immigrant and moved to Pennsylvania, and you would think because that seemed pretty common at the time that he would kind of figure out how to make it happen. And so he went from failing at farming to being able to design complex bridges. So I'd be like, help me connect that transition. Let me see and understand where that happened.
Incredible. All right, well, here's a softball throw for you. Who's your favorite baseball player of all time?
Okay, that one I think hopefully, yeah, it's a little bit more closer to home. So I'm very, I would say, biased in saying it, but Nicky Lopez is definitely my favorite baseball player, and that's because I've actually met Nicky, and we do have an endorsement deal with Nicky, and so being able to get to know somebody who's a professional baseball player and understand how hard he has worked to get to that point, I think just really resonates with me, and something I can tell my boys of just like how people can make something that they do look so easy, but there's so much work behind the scenes that you have to do. So that's just kind of like a fun personal favorite for me.
Talking about work behind the scenes, what do you think are the top 3 skills that every entrepreneur needs to be successful?
I think they need the mind of a goldfish for sure, and they need to. I think it's finding. They need to be able to find that fine balance of like work life and personal life, because inevitably they blend and they bleed together. And so then the third is great communication skills, because you have to be able to, whether it's communicating with your partner, this is the expectations, this is what I'm signing up for and I want us to sign up for, and then also being able to communicate and sell what you're doing. I mean, a lot of times you look at the great success stories where somebody didn't necessarily invent that product, but they were the entrepreneur who knew how to get that to the consumer, to convince the consumer that's what they needed. And so the communication skills, I think, are just critical.
What's one product that's made your life a little bit easier during this pandemic?
Man, I'm trying to think of like what part of the pandemic that I can address. I would say YouTube, because the amount of home projects I then worked on while being isolated and being a first-time homeowner, YouTube and FaceTime to call my dad as well and get advice on how to fix whatever is broken next.
Nice. Technology. All right, last question. And I know this is the first Kickstarter campaign for you guys with Yardball, but very interested to hear your take on what does the future of crowdfunding look like?
Man, I think for me, crowdfunding is definitely more of a social media aspect, and way more than when Kickstarter got started, and like maybe how crowdfunding really brought up and through the various means of communication. But I do think that the way that things can go viral and then appealing to each generation with that is critical. And I think being able to understand that and being able to tweak your message to that way, I think is key. When you look at whether it's a crowd who's only in TikTok or in Snapchat versus Instagram or Facebook, like they're just different kinds of consumers. And so going above and beyond your normal, whether you're doing an email campaign or how you're spending your advertising dollars, I think having a good understanding of the playing field and where you might know and have your niche, but also where you don't. And that's where you have, whether you lean on somebody externally or go figure it out. I just think that's key. Like you have to meet the complexity at those complex roads.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, this has been amazing. This is your last opportunity to give our audience your pitch, tell people what you're all about, where they should go, and why they should check out Yardball.
Yeah, so please go to Kickstarter.com, search Yardball, and back us, support us. Pick up a Yardball, 2 or 3 for your family. It's the ball for all. No glove needed. You can play with a glove, but toss it in your glove box and have an impromptu game of catch.
Amazing. Well, audience, thanks again for tuning in. Make sure to visit artofthekickstart.com for the notes, transcript, links to the campaign, and everything else we talked about today. And of course, I got to give a shout out to our crowdfunding podcast sponsor over at Product Hype, the top newsletter for new products just like this. Garrett, Chad, thank you so much for joining us today on Art of the Kickstart.
Thanks so much, Roy.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Thank you for tuning into another amazing episode of Art of the Kickstart, the show about building a better business, life, and world with crowdfunding. If you've enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, make sure to show us some love, by rating us and reviewing us on your favorite listening station, whatever that may be. Your review really helps other founders and startups find us so they can improve their craft and achieve greater success like you. And of course, be sure to visit artofthekickstart.com for all the previous episodes. And if you need any help, make sure to send me an email at info@artofthekickstart.com. I'd be glad to help you out. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you next week.